Welcome to today's interview. We are talking about movement and diabetes reversal, and I'm so happy that Jennifer Barrett can be here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so happy to be here having this discussion with you today.
Absolutely. Jennifer is a health and life empowerment coach and a personal trainer, as well as the owner of Barrett Fitness. She has been in the health and wellness industry for 20 years. She's a certified health coach and transformational coach through the Health Coach Institute, has a group fitness certification and a personal training certification, as well as a prevent type 2 diabetes lifestyle coach. So you can see she covers all the bases here. And I would love to hear a little bit about how you got started being interested in this intersection of fitness and health and diabetes. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I just find that most of the people in this line of work that I've talked to, we come by it honestly, and it's usually based on our own experiences, right? I'm sure
Yes.
you found that as well. So for me, my history is with autoimmune disease, which is also, a lifestyle disease,
Mm-hmm.
a disease that is no fun. I was, looking back, actually, like throughout my entire life, I kind of had unwanted symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And what normally happens is we reach a certain age and all of these things pile up in us, and it's like our bodies are like, nope, you're just not going to ignore it anymore. And so that's kind of what happened to me, which I think is probably a lot of what happens to anyone with a chronic illness. So my history was with exercise. That's kind of where I started about 20 years ago in the health industry. I owned a fitness franchise. At the time, I had two small children, you know, running this business and raising kids. I just thought I should be able to do it all. So looking back, of course, this is when health issues popped up. I mean, I was
Yeah.
stressed out to the max and, not taking time to slow down and realize
Yeah.
that I don't have to do it all.
Mm.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I started with fitness. And kind of along that same period of time, I was like, all right, I'm just going to eat whatever I want, do whatever I want, and then just exercise it all away. Right. As I'm sure a lot of us have felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know better, thank goodness, and I definitely want to share that with you today. But so okay, started out as a fitness franchise owner, got into personal training, and then that's kind of when some of my health issues got worse, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. So, as is the story probably with a lot of us, I visited many a doctor. Don't even need to go through all the ones and all the crazy things that they told me. But I finally landed on nutrition and why it's so important to eat well. You can't just exercise and eat bad and you're going to feel well, right?
Mm.
So I kind of got into that and then became a certified health coach, kind of added that on because I just became more and more um, excited about helping others so they don't have to go through all the
Mm.
rigmarole that I did.
Mm-hmm.
So I, implemented a little bit of healthy eating, a lot of healthy eating, in fact. And then just, with all the certifications that I've added on over the years, I'm
Mm-hmm.
adding more and more to my practice. Like it's a lot about nervous system regulation, chronic
Mm.
stress, and, emotional resilience. It's all of that in a big package.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's a little bit about my story. I don't know if you have any specific questions on any of that.
Well, I love that. And like you said, most of us have some kind of a reason, personal reason why we get involved in health. And
Mhm.
so it's really interesting to hear how you came to that. And then you found that to really experience your best health, you needed to have exercise, but also make sure you were looking at these other aspects of your wellness, like what you're eating and how you were dealing with stress. Today, I'd
Mhm.
like us to focus in a little bit around the exercise piece. So let's talk about how have you seen exercise be important when people are dealing with metabolic issues like pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so it's definitely, I'm sure most people that are on this healing from diabetes journey know that we have to cover the foundations, right? That's going to be
Mhm.
eating well, that's going to be moving our bodies. And I love that you call it movement because a lot of the people that I've worked with who are fighting, who are either pre-diabetic or already diagnosed with diabetes don't want to exercise, right? And so I love the fact that we just call it movement and just
Mhm.
how can you get a little bit of movement into your day? It's going to help control your blood sugar. It's going to help control your diet. It's going to alleviate stress, so many amazing things.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's just a big part of overall wellness for all of us.
It really is. And if someone doesn't have a regular exercise habit, maybe, most of their exercises just walking around their house, activities of daily living, but they know they really need to do a little more. Where would you advise they start, or how should they get going?
Yeah, so great question. I'm so glad you asked me that. So I always have my clients meet themselves where they are. It's
Mm.
not like all of a sudden you're sedentary, you've been sedentary for years and all of a sudden you're going to go do CrossFit 5 times a week. No, that would be crazy talk, right? So it's not about, trying to make a million different changes all at once, get to this amazing fitness level overnight. So, if for my sedentary people, I just like you said, can you walk around the house for a couple of minutes a day? Right? Can you gradually build that up to where you're walking a mile? And let's just kind of, take it from there. So it's never about making big leaps. It's about saying, okay, this is what I'm doing now. How can I implement a little bit of cardio, strength training, hopefully both of those into my routine to, reverse my diabetes or prevent it from even happening?
And I like the prevention part because that's even better. And, as we look at our lives as entrepreneurs, especially since COVID, so many of us are spending a lot of time in front of a screen in one way or another, kind of like you and I are doing right now.
Exactly.
So if I am an entrepreneur, I own my own business, or I have a side hustle, and I feel very crunched maybe for time. When am I going to get the things done that I need to do to move my business forward? What are some strategies or tools that you would suggest for getting a healthy amount of movement into my day?
Yeah, great question. So, I'm an entrepreneur, and here we are sitting in front of our computers. So, you better believe before this, when I was preparing to talk to you today, I was doing laps around my house, right? Like I
Mm.
had a little bit of nervous energy. I, was with clients this morning, so I didn't have time to get my workout in. So that's how I added in. And so what I always like to tell my clients is that, we don't have to think of exercise as a 30-minute to 60-minute block of time throughout our day. We need to think of it as how can I fit it into my already busy schedule? So for some of us, that might look like doing a little bit before we, get started. I talk to a lot of people with small children, and they're just like, I can't get up any earlier than 5 a.m. to exercise. So, we kind of work around that. You could do, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, walk around while you're on the phone. There are so many ways to build it into your day because I am a believer that there's always time for what we want to prioritize. Just sometimes we haven't made movement a priority. So yeah, those are just a few ideas that I like to recommend to people.
I think those are great ideas. And I know that I've used some of them. For example, this morning I had a phone meeting, and it was actually a Zoom, but it wasn't like a client call. It
Mhm.
was working with one of my kind of support groups that other entrepreneurs that we get together on a regular basis
Nice.
to encourage each other, check in with each other.
Yeah.
And so I was able to do my walk while I was on that call with them.
Perfect.
And so I got the movement in, but I also was able to keep up with commitments that were sitting on my schedule. If someone is spending a lot of time in the sedentary part of their business, how often do you think it's important for them to move? And what would be some ways for them to do that without maybe like losing their flow? If they're working on a
Right.
big project or something like that.
Right. So yeah, it'll be a lot of the things, I've already mentioned, but it also reminds me, I don't know if you've heard this lately, but I've heard this quote come up here and there that sitting is the new smoking. Have you heard that?
Yes, I so believe that.
I know. I kind of think it's a little bit on the dramatic side, but I think it makes a really good point because we our bodies crave movement whether we're giving it to them or not. So I like to bring in some accountability tools with my clients. Like I suggest that they set a timer every hour if possible, just to have them get up, take a couple laps
Mm,
around the office or the home or walk outside. I do this, pick a couple of weeds out of the garden or something, take the trash
yeah.
out, go to the mailbox, right? Like the more you can add that in, hopefully at least every hour. It might not happen that way, but we set goals to move us closer towards that, not necessarily to always reach it. That's sometimes hard depending on how busy we are, but I like to have that timer. You can turn it off if you need to, but maybe that next hour you'll be able to get up, take a lap, do some squats at your chair. I mean, there's so
Mm.
many different resistance things we can do. Walk up and down your stairs, kind of, different things like that.
I think that's really important for us to remember because we can work in little bits of movement. And I
Mhm.
know for me, if I don't set a timer, a lot of
Mhm.
times an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours could go by, and I simply don't even think about the fact that I haven't had a break.
Yeah, we're busy
Because,
entrepreneurs.
yes,
If we don't work,
absolutely.
we don't get paid, right?
That's right. And so sometimes that pushes things like exercise to the margins. And yet, if we do that on a regular basis,
Mhm.
it's going to raise its ugly head in a way we probably are not wanting and will really interfere with our business. So I really believe it is important that we keep this as a priority in our lives if we're looking to prevent or reverse these kinds of diseases. So let's dive in a little bit more about why exercise is such an important part of the diabetes reversal process. Um, do you have some things you might want to share around what's going on in our bodies when we exercise, or like kind of understanding a little bit more about why it's important?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of people that are either reversing or trying to prevent diabetes have a weight problem, right? Like a lot of
Mm,
us are overweight. And so definitely, I mean, I think this goes without saying, we all know intellectually that exercise is an important part of weight loss.
mhm.
Cardio is important to get our heart pumping. It's great for heart health. It's great for losing weight all over. I also always encourage my clients to add in some resistance training because the more muscle you have, the better your diabetes control, your blood sugar is going to be, but also the more fat that you're going to burn. So,
Mm.
even if we're adding on weight with our muscle, we're going to burn fat a lot easier. So, like just you and I sitting here talking on Zoom, we're sitting, if we have muscle in our bodies, we're going to be burning fat. And who doesn't want that when they're sitting at their desk a great, amount of the day? So that's super important. Another thing I like to have people do is, can you walk around? Just take a walk after you eat.
Mm.
Especially after dinner, that last meal of the day, that's going to help that blood sugar kind of come into balance. We won't be on that blood sugar roller coaster quite as much if we can add in a little bit of walking, especially after eating.
I think that's a really, really important point, and I want to come back to that in a minute. But you were mentioning resistance training and strength training. Is there a difference between those two terms?
No, not really. I know a lot
Okay.
of people, women especially, they're so afraid of building muscle. But I'm here to tell you today that's really hard to do. So don't be afraid of heavy weights. Don't be afraid of lifting, of gradually building up to lifting heavy weights. It's so, so good for you. Resistance training. So, yeah, when I owned my fitness franchise, it was called Stroller Fit, and we exercised with our babies in a stroller. So we couldn't carry around heavy heavy weights other than the weight
Mm.
of the child. So we
Mm-hmm.
had resistance bands and tubes, and those provide just enough resistance that you're going to still build muscle, lose
Mm.
fat. You don't really need those heavy weights. So, there's so many things out there. I do love resistance bands and tubes, especially for travel, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
pack them in your suitcase. You can do things on the go. You don't even have to, visit a gym or lift heavy weights if you don't want to. It's all just, goes under that umbrella of resistance training.
That's really good to clarify that, because both of those, whichever term you use, the real focus of that is building muscle mass. And I think that it's important for women to understand, when we build muscle mass, it's not going to make us look like Atlas, but
Mm-hmm.
what it will do is actually just tone our bodies
Yeah.
and give us good shape, and like you say, trade muscle weight for fat weight. And so
Yeah.
we're going to be healthier, we're going to have more energy, and we're also going to have like smaller clothing sizes, even at the same weight, if we're trading fat for muscle and building more muscle, losing more fat. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Absolutely. And I'm always telling my clients, like, asking them, what are your non-scale victories? Even if
Mm-hmm.
you don't see the scale moving, in some ways, I wish we didn't have to weigh ourselves, it's just kind of something we do for our doctor, right? So I'm not even recommending that if you're not in the headspace for it, but I really suggest that you appreciate yourself for your clothes fitting better or
Mm-hmm.
having more energy. There's so many other things that we can be appreciative of rather than just the number on the scale.
That's so important. And going back to what you had mentioned about walking after meals, I want to really emphasize that for our listeners, because that is such an important, uh, simple tool to lower key indicators like your A1C numbers.
Yeah.
Because the less of a spike you have after your meals, the lower your blood sugar averages will be, which are reflected right in your A1C. And moving right after a meal is one of the most effective ways to do that.
Right.
In fact, I've heard it said that many people can drop their after meal blood sugar peaks by 2 points for every minute of movement. So if
Mhm.
you move for 30 minutes, a lot of people can drop their blood sugars like by 60 points just by doing that without even changing what they're eating.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really significant, because it means a big difference for your health.
Right.
So, your biggest walking after your biggest meal is definitely a high recommendation. But if you do it every time you eat, you're going to get even more benefits. So,
For sure.
yes, I think, don't be discouraged in that. Maybe you don't feel like you're athletic, or maybe you're even struggling with walking. But
Right.
I have seen people that are just moving with their walkers for 30 minutes
Yes.
after a meal and really see good results. So it's
Yes.
not about how fast or how far, it's about you moving your arms and your legs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought that in, because you're right. It's not about going out and walking a mile or two. It might even for some people be stretching their legs, like sitting on their couch if they're, have limited movement and just, circling their legs up and down, right? Just getting some sort of blood flow,
Mm-hmm.
walking with the walker, right? It's about meeting
Mm-hmm.
yourself where you are. And I guarantee if you meet yourself where you are and gradually add on 5 or 10 minutes, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get to where you want to be for sure.
Yes. And it's interesting that even when sometimes people feel like not moving because they're having a lot of pain,
Mhm.
that it's very common that the more people are able to move, that they actually see their pain drop, especially if it's related to
Absolutely.
arthritis and
Yeah.
some of those joint issues, that walking actually helps to oil those joints and make
Yes,
them work better.
that's a great point. And I'm glad that you brought that up because, we often think that we need to be sedentary to avoid pain. But, I would just suggest like give it a try. Try 2 minutes of walking around your house, right? Gradually build
Mhm.
up, see how it feels. For most people, yeah, it does end up feeling good. I had a client the other day, in fact, that was having some foot pain and she'd been off of her feet for a long time, was avoiding doing any sort of exercise. And she had to go walk her kid to school one day. And she's like, oh my gosh, I feel better. So, just try it out and see. It's worth a shot.
Absolutely. Um, there's some people that I've talked to that say that women especially need to be careful about like the amount and the intensity of cardio exercise. What's your opinion on that?
Of course, always check with your provider, make sure that you're cleared for exercise. Again, I feel like a broken record, but meet yourself where you are. Don't go to CrossFit if you're not even walking, if you're sedentary a lot of the time. So yeah, just know your numbers, know your heart rate, know, what's too high for you, notice your breathing. What I like to suggest to people is you want to get in enough physical activity to where you can still carry on a conversation with
Mm,
someone, but that it would be hard to sing a song. So that's just without even looking at your numbers. That's kind of an easy marker, like the talk test. Walk with, a spouse or a friend and see if you can carry on a good conversation. It doesn't have to be anything more than that to reap the benefits.
okay, I think that's really great rule of thumb for people to use.
Yeah.
Now, we find that tracking can sometimes improve our consistency and help us to regularly do our movement time, whatever we're working into our daily routine. What are
Yeah.
some of the ways that you have seen easiest for people to track their movement?
Yeah, so we're on the same wavelength here. I love that we're having this discussion because your accountability partner doesn't have to be a person. It can be, a Fitbit, your Apple Watch. You can like set a goal for yourself to hit a certain number of steps. In fact, that's what I do with a lot of my clients who are like, I'm too busy to walk. I work all day and then I'm tired. I'm like, okay, let's look at your watch, see how many steps you're getting. Let's set a goal and
Mm,
just kind of work towards that. Myself, I have a very easy system. I print out a calendar from my computer, and every day I write down the activity that I do. And I
mm,
want to have activity almost every day, right? Like my minimum goal is 30 minutes. I don't always achieve it. I travel, I do whatever. But just having that little accountability tool, that calendar, or whatever it is for you, that app. There are so many good apps out there to track your movement. So I think that it's a fabulous tool just to, have you kind of stick to your goals and reach most of them.
I think that's a great idea. One of the things that I love about my Apple phone, I
Mhm.
don't have a fancy watch or a Fitbit even, but
Yeah.
if I carry my phone with me, it's a pretty good tracker for steps. And I
Yeah.
think steps are a good way just to see what our total movement is over the day.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's true for all different brands of smartphones at this point, but I know I remember seeing some research on the iPhone. They have like a really good accelerometer in it, so it's a really good way to track steps. It's quite accurate.
Yeah.
And so I that's one of the things I can do. And you can look back, like if you forget to check yesterday, you can always look back and say, well, what did I do? So that's one of the things that I know I enjoy doing. And if people are looking at steps and tracking steps, what would you consider a goal to shoot for?
What I tell people is just monitor where you are in your current day, right? Like where a lot of us
Mm-hmm.
are probably sitting a lot. So maybe you're only at 3,000 steps in a day, and I'm just making this up based on people that I've talked to. So maybe
Yeah.
you just say, okay, I'm going to walk when I'm on the phone during the day. I'm going to go up and down the stairs in between calls, and see if you can gradually bump it up. I've heard like aim for 10,000 in a day, and I've started watching my steps, and I typically walk at least 30 minutes a day plus other things. And
Mhm.
it's hard to get to 10,000 steps a day. So I kind of think let's not start reaching for that. Let's see where we are and then gradually start to bump it up.
And just out of curiosity, do you know offhand about how many miles 10,000 steps is? Like if someone knows, like
Oh,
I'm doing a 2 mile loop every day, but then I also move, like how many miles about is
I'm looking at
10,000? Do you
my
know?
watch right now because this will help. Um, I don't know for sure. I want to say I don't know. I don't want to give you the numbers because I'm not 100%.
Okay.
But I just think use your tools and kind of see where you are. If you have an Apple Watch or Apple phone or whatever phone that you have,
Hmm.
it probably keeps track of that for you. I want to say 10,000 steps is like 5 miles, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think I'd heard somewhere in that vicinity, 4 miles. I'm thinking it's about 2,500 steps for most people for a mile. So that would make it about 4 miles. But
Yeah.
that just kind of gives a ballpark figure. And if you're one of those analysts and you want to know exactly how far it is,
Yeah.
just Google it. It'll come right up.
Yeah.
I know because I've done it before.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm glad that you mentioned that. Some of us are very analytical. I had a prevent type 2 diabetes client who had a spreadsheet and he would analyze his, how many steps he would get and compare it. I mean, if that is you, go for it. Like that is an amazing
Hmm.
accountability tool. As a former accountant, I kind of lean towards that, but that's maybe
Hmm.
taking it even a little too far for me. I have my little calendar and I just write down what I do in that
Yeah.
work. It's about finding something that works for you, right?
Hmm. It totally is. And figuring out a way to have some accountability, some way to track it. I think those are things that really do help people to integrate that into their lives. And that's what we're looking at is forming some kind of a habit where you have a space in your
Mhm.
day that you will consistently be moving. And even if you have to start with a very small window of space, getting that into your daily routine is the best way to become consistent. I think it's even more important than the length of time that you spend in it, especially as you're setting up the habit. That
Mhm.
consistency in doing something every day is actually
Mhm.
better than doing a lot just a few times a week.
Yes, I would totally agree with that. If we try to add on too much, do too much right out of the gate, what usually happens for most people is we get overwhelmed and we say, or if we're exercising that much, we get sore and we're like, I don't want to, not be able to walk. I'm not going to do this again. So yeah, just gradually add on. I think that's such a good way to go for sure.
I love that. So, one of the things that you've prepared for our listeners, we've been talking about how important it is to look at movement, to look at our nutrition, to look at our stress management. In
Mhm.
fact, I had someone just the other day asking me, does stress actually affect your blood sugars? He says, I've been looking at my blood sugars, and there's days when I thought I did everything right, and my
Mhm.
numbers are just so high. And then other days where maybe I wasn't paying attention to what I was eating or getting my exercise, and my numbers are better. He says, is stress really something that can affect my blood sugars? And so I was telling him, yeah, it definitely is. I personally know people that can go from a blood sugar of 110 to 400 just over a stressful phone call.
Right.
So,
Right.
I think people need to realize that, yes, there's like this really strong connection. So, stress is also one of the things that we can address as we move because it helps our bodies deal with the stress hormones and get rid of them. And so,
Yeah.
you have a special gift for those that are listening that is, you're going to find on the same page where you're watching this video. And tell me about these three powerful tools that you've prepared.
I do. So it's not even exercise. So there are just, it's a lot about bringing in some gratitude, noticing what stress feels like in your body, because sometimes we don't even realize that we're under stress. And in fact, I'm in the process of preparing a free workshop called From Chaos to Calm. And it's
Mm,
just going to kind of teach people how, we have to first notice what stress feels like in our body in order to do something about it, because stress might come from being hard on ourselves or being a people pleaser. Like, it's not always illness, or it's
Mhm.
not always caring for an aging parent or whatever. It's just some of the things that we just have in our day-to-day lives because stress isn't going anywhere. So just taking a look at that, it might even motivate us to want to move our bodies more, to, like you said, get some of that cortisol out, get some of those stress hormones out of our body, so we can even find the time to implement some of these other tools and things.
So what you have is if people click on that link, they will download a tool that gives you 3 powerful ways to manage stress. Is that what we've got?
Exactly. And it, in the title, it is for midlife women, I believe. But
Okay.
let me tell you the big secret. This works for everyone on the planet. I send it to men all the time, and young women and young men. So it works for everyone for sure.
That's great to know. That's great to know. And I'm just so thankful that you're able to be with us here today to share from your expertise, because Jennifer is bringing to us her experience as she's coached women who are frustrated by realizing what they've always been doing isn't working for them anymore. And maybe they have autoimmune disorders like she experienced, or pain, or other chronic health conditions. So she loves to help these women to refocus on themselves, take charge of their health, and create habits and routines that will fill their lives with confidence, peace, joy, and purpose. And I just really appreciate you bringing your wealth of experience to us today and sharing with our community. So I just want to say thank you so much, Jennifer. It's been great. Do you have any final words of wisdom that you would like to leave for people to think about?
So thank you for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. One of my missions just in doing work with people is to let people know that they're not alone. There are
Mm.
other people that are experiencing what you're experiencing. There is help out there. So, reach out to someone, whether it's a coach or a friend or an accountability partner. Just, you're not alone, and there are ways to change your current experience if you're not happy with it.
I love that. And for all of my listeners, remember that health is wealth, and it comes by choice, not by chance. Thank you for being here with us today.